Hello and welcome to chapter 14 of our HTML and CSS web development course. In this chapter 14, we are going to look at lists, tables, and forms. Lists, tables, and forms. And some of the sub-units are specifying bullet point styles, adding borders and backgrounds to tables, and also changing the appearance of form elements. Now let's talk about the first, which is bullet point styles. Bullet point styles. Now the list style type property allows you to control the shape or style of a bullet point known as a marker. So we are going to learn how to control the shape and style of the marker. It can be used on rules that apply to ordered lists, unordered lists, and list items. Okay, unordered lists. For an unordered list, you can use the following values. So you can use none, you can use disk, you can use circle, and we can use square. That is for unordered list. Now for ordered list, or numbered list, you can use the following: the decimal, which is 1 2 3 4, and then we can use the decimal leading 0, which is 0 1 0 2 0 3, in that order. And then we can use the lower alpha, which is lower cases of what? The alphabet A B C. We have the upper alpha, which is the what? Block letters, or what you call uppercase letters, which is capital A, capital B, and capital C. We can also use lower Roman numerals, which is I stands for 1, I stands for 2, I stands for 3. Lower Roman numerals. And we can use the upper Roman numeral, which is capital I stands for 1, capital I stands for 2, and capital I stands for 3. Now this is a classical example which we are going to check in our text editor. So we have a heading, level 1 header, which is the complete poems, another heading, and we have an unordered list and some list items. That is for the HTML. In styling them, we use list style type, and we wrote what? Lower Roman. That means it's going to be I stands for 1, I stands for 2, I stands for 3. Let's check this out in our text editor. Now this is the code I just pasted, which is a level 1 heading, level 2 heading, and then the list items. That is in my HTML. So I'm going to save my HTML. So I'm going to my CSS, and then I'll set the rules. I've cleared all my other codes to make way for this particular chapter. So the unordered list altogether, I'm using the list style type property, and I'm giving it a lower Roman. By default, it's going to number them. It has done the decimal numbering for me by default, but I've indicated the kind of marker I want. I want it to be in the lower Roman. So I'm going back to my text editor, and I'll save this work. Now come to my browser and refresh. Now you see it has changed to the lower Roman as we have what we have styled in our CSS. So I stand for 1, I, and they are the what? The lower cases. We will also be looking at images for bullets. Okay, so this in this case is not list style type, it's going to be list style image. You can specify an image to act as a bullet point using the list style image property. The value starts with the letters URL and is followed by a pair of parentheses inside the parentheses, the path to the image is given inside double quotes. This property can be used on rules that apply to the unordered list and then the list elements. The example we are going to show you shows the use of the margin property to increase the vertical gap between each item in the list. Now, this is the HTML code we posted earlier, example of what we posted earlier, and we are going to use these styles. Okay, these styles, this is giving a 10 pixels margin, and then this is the list image. This is the source of the image, okay, or the URL or far part of the image. So let's check out how this thing works in our text editor and browser. Now, this is the other set of lists items that we have placed on our page. Let's style it using the images to see how it's going to work. Okay, so I'll save this and I'll come to the HTML also, and I'll save. I'll come to my web browser and then I'll refresh. So I'll see the lists of my stars. So this is the first one and this is the second. Now it's actually showing our stars of our image. So you can see it is faint. All this part is one of the bullets, so we can add more stars by specifying the sizes, okay, by specifying the height of the bullet point. So this one bullet point with the name Ophelia, the next bullet point is to music, and then the last bullet point is for a dream for winter, and we have vowels, and we have the drunken bolt as indicated on our browser. Now the next thing we are going to look at is positioning the marker. So in this we are going to look at the property list star and position. Lists are indented into the page by default, and the list star position property indicates whether the marker should appear on the inside or outside of the box containing the main point. This property can take one of two values, either outside or inside. When it is outside, the marker sits to the left of the block of the text. Now this is the default behavior if this property is not used. Now when it is inside, okay, when it takes the value inside, the marker sits inside the box of text, which is what indented. In the example I'm going to show you, you realize the width of the list has been limited to 150 pixels. This ensures that the text wraps onto a new line, so you can see how the value of inside sits the bullet inside the first line of text. A margin has been added to each list item so that there is clear gap between each list item. Now this is the positioning property. So you see an unordered list with a class of illumination which has 3 list items, another one with a class of season which also has 3 list items. Now the unordered list has a width of 150 pixels and there is 10 pixels margin, okay, for each of them, whilst the one with the class of illumination was positioned outside and that of the class of season was positioned inside. Let's look at the way this is going to appear on our browser using our HTML editor or our text editor. Now in my text editor, I've typed in the HTML code that has two different lists on other lists, actually, one with the class of illumination, the other with the class of season, with 3 list items for each of them. Now let me save this and then go to the CSS as well and type in the style. Alright, so I paste in the code for the on other lists. Let me save this and then view on my browser. Now you realize one is outside, okay, so you can see it as outside, while the other is inside. You can see it within the box, which is what, indented. But this is actually by default, which is the one with outside. You can see the bullet points are outside, while this one, the bullet points are inside. Okay, so this is the explanation I wanted to give. You can see the test wrap so that you can actually see that it is within the box. So there's a test wrap here that indicates this does not exceed the point, the bullet point. So this is indented and this is inside, whilst this one has the position of what, outside. So either you use an inside or an outside. Now let's talk about the list style or the list shorthand. The list style, as with several of the other CSS properties, there is a property that acts as a shorthand for list styles. It is called the list style property, and it allows you to express the marker style, image and position properties in one straight order, just like we did for background images. So this is the HTML code you are going to work with, and then this is the shorthand we are going to work with. Now with the shorthand, it's going to indicate the style, other things too. So it's going to indicate the width and the height, whether inside. Also it's going to indicate whether you want it inside or you want it outside. It's just going to give you the chance to give margins, okay, in order to what, to put some spaces between your list items. So let's check out how this one is going to work. So unlike the previous specification we were doing for list style type, list style image and list style position, the shorthand allows us to actually write a one-off code but include all these other properties. So I've typed in the HTML code here. Let me save it, go to my CSS and then paste the code we are going to use to explain the list style, which include all of the examples we've already stated. Let me try and comment this. Let me comment this out. Let me comment this one out. I leave this. Now I'm saving. Let me refresh the browser. The styling we want inside, so you can see that now the one we're using for outside now is all inside. It's all inside the box, and then we use only the shorthand. Okay, with the shorthand in doing that example. So let me just do a brief editing. Okay, let me just use square. Let me just use a square instead of, and then let me use outside. Let me use outside and let me use a square. Let me save it. Now refresh my browser to see the effect now. So you can see now it is outside and it is square. You can also use a disk like we explained earlier. Okay, so you can use a shorthand, and a shorthand helps you to do all these styles. It makes your code neater, it makes it shorter but still achieve the same purpose. The next thing we're going to look at is table properties. And you are done with the list properties. Let's look at the table properties in CSS. You see, as you have already met several properties that are commonly used with tables, we are going to put them together in a single example. Okay, so we're going to talk about the width, which is used to set the width of the table, the padding, which is used to set the space between the border of each table cell and its content, and then also we're going to talk about text transform, which is used to convert the content of the table headers to uppercase. Okay, and then we are also going to talk about letter spacing, font size, border top, border bottom, text align, and there is background color, and even hovering. Okay, the hover is used to highlight a table row when a user mouse goes over it, so that you know which particular cell you are currently on. Okay, we are also going to look at some tips used for styling tables, okay, to make sure that our work is easy and clean. I want to give cells padding. Usually when you are creating tables and you don't give padding, it doesn't look neat, it looks messy. So we are going to look at how to give cells padding. Okay, if the text in the table cell either touches the border, it becomes much harder to read. And we are also going to distinguish headings, putting all table headings in bold, you see, by using the table header element, makes them easier to read. You can also make headings uppercase and then either add a background color or an underline to clearly distinguish it from the main content. Let's say you are differentiating between boys and girls and it's a 2-column table. Each column header, okay, should be uppercase to differentiate it from the differences we're going to list under it, whilst or it should be colored in a form just to separate it from the main content. We are also going to look at how to make our work in it by adding shade alternate rows. Shading every other row can help others follow along the lines. This particular style is now heavily used in MS Word, so that each row has a separate color. Okay, so that to make it will be easier for you to distinguish between which particular row you are in and which row you are about to enter. Align numerals. You can use the text align property to align the content of any column that contains numbers to the right, so that large numbers are clearly distinguished from smaller ones. And you also have the liberty to look for more examples online on how to style tables. Okay, now this example we are going to explain all these things we've spoken about. A level 1 heading. Okay, there you see a table, and the table ends somewhere here. Within the table, see table row, and the table row first one has a header like we explained. Okay, it also has a title. That means this is like a 2-column table. Now this is money. They all have a class of money, so we can style them together. We can style them. You see, that's the style here. We are making it what? Uppercase. See, I styling it here uppercase. So even though it is written here with a sentence case, in our styling we are going to style all our table headers to be what? To be uppercase. So this particular example will explain all what we've spoken about and how to make a table look very nice and then easier and cleaner to read and to understand. Okay, so we are going straight into our text editor, and then we are going to view the results in our browser. Because these codes are a bit longer, let me clear all this HTML. Let me clear it up to this place, and then I'll paste the code we are going to use to explain the tables, the table property. Okay, so I can save this HTML Let me view my browser. I know it's going to look a bit messy. You see, and this is the table without the stylings. Okay, so you can see this is just like the content. It's also just like the content, so we are going to style it and make these capitals, put some paddings and some borders, and let's see how it's going to look. So let's go back to our text editor, go to the CSS, replace it with the codes for the table properties. Okay, so all right, let me just change some colors here. Let me just save it, Control S to save it, go to my web browser and refresh. Now I'm going to see a clear difference, between what I did earlier and then this. I gave it a color. Let me just change it to black. Let me change it to black. All right, let me resave it and then come back to my page. All right, so you can see all the table headers are uppercase, and then you see the hovering. The moment I put my mouse pointer on it, it should indicate which particular row I am on. See, so my hovering is actually working. We still have some empty element styling. Okay, so this is how to make tables beautiful as compared to the ones we were using without the styles. All right, now the next thing we are also going to check is border on empty cells. So empty cells property. If you have empty cells in your table, then you can use the empty cells property to specify whether or not their borders should be shown. Since browsers treat empty cells in different ways, if you want to explicitly show or hide borders on any empty cells, then you should use this property, which is the empty cells property. It can take one of three values, either show, hide, or inherit. When you use the show, okay, it's going to show the borders of any empty cell to indicate that it's actually empty, and the hide is also going to hide the border of any empty cell, whilst the inherit is used if you have one table nested inside another. The inherit value instructs the table cells to obey the rules of the containing table. So it's just going to inherit, okay, it's going to inherit the properties of the other table, let's say the mother table. I'm going to show you an example, and in the example we are going to see the border of the empty cell is showing and the other one it is hidden. So let me show you the codes first of all. Now this is what I'm going to show you. These two tables, one has a class of 1, okay, and the table data, which I'm going to give 1 pixel and a solid border around it, and a padding of 15 pixels. And this I'm going to show, okay, I'm going to show for table 1, and then table 2 is going to hide. So let's do this practical example and then come back to our slides. Now I have added the HTML codes, okay, of the table to show and then to hide empty cell borders. Now we move to the CSS area, and then we are going to, let me add the codes to start this particular HTML. I've just added this table to indicate how to show or hide empty cells. I'll go to my browser and I refresh. Now if you check these two examples I've given, 1, 2, 3, there's a fourth one. This is an empty cell, just like this, just like that, but I decided to show it so everyone will see that it is empty. But this 1, 2, 3, 4, this is not displaying the fourth cell, so this is hiding the fourth cell whilst this is showing the fourth cell. So this is the example I wanted to explain. I hope you are getting it. This is empty, but it is showing the borders, whilst this is what empty and it's not showing at all. So there is a hidden cell here. All right, let's continue with gaps between cells. So border spacing and border collapse. The border spacing property allows you to control the distance between adjacent cells. By default, browsers often leave a small gap between each table cell. So if you want to increase or you want to decrease this space, then the border spacing property allows you to control the gap. The value of this property is usually specified in pixels. You can specify two values if desired to specify separate numbers for horizontal and vertical spacing. When a border has been used on table cells where two cells meet, the width of lines would be twice that of the outside edges. It is possible to collapse adjacent borders to prevent this using the border collapse property. Possible values you are going to use in border spacing and border collapse is collapse and then separate. Now borders are collapsed into a single border where possible. Border spacing will be ignored and cells pushed together, and empty cell properties will be ignored. What about the separate? The separate value allows borders to be detached from each other. So in this case, it's not merged, just like we have in Excel. That we have merged, and then we have others that are separate. So when you're using a separate, they are detached from each other. Border spacing in empty cells will be obeyed. Styling forms. We are going to forms. We are done with lists and then done with tables. Now let's look at forms. Nobody I know enjoys filling in forms, because filling forms or doing surveys is a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort by you filling in your details. So if you want to make yours more attractive and easier for people to use, they are likely to fill it. But if it's lengthy and it's not organized properly, it is very, very difficult, and most people do not like it at all. I'm going to explain how to style your forms, okay, for forms to look attractive, for people to actually like it, to actually fill in your queries. It is most common to style text input and text areas, and then submit buttons and labels on forms, because forms actually either they allow you to input your text, either a short text or a long text, or it's a lot of submit buttons, and you see this radio button and all other types of ways of filling forms, date picker and what have you. Styling text input and submit buttons is fairly easy. It is harder to get select boxes, radio buttons and check boxes to look consistent across all browsers. To achieve this, you might want to download the CSS files available at formalize.me. I've already downloaded it. You can try and download it. The author of this website has done the hard work for making forms look consistent across all browsers. Although the solution incorporates JavaScript, no prior knowledge of JavaScript, is needed in order to implement the code. Now let's go to styling test input itself. The example I'm going to show you will demonstrate CSS properties commonly used with test input, most of which we've already met. So font size, we're going to talk about font size, which sets the size of the text entered by the user, and then text color, which sets a color for the text. Background color sets the background color of the input. Okay. Border, it has a border around the edge of the input box, and border radius can be used to create rounded corners. Okay, rounded corners. Now the focus pseudo class, okay, is used to change the background color of the text input, and then the hover pseudo class applies to the same star when the user hovers over them. We did one example in our other table. Background image is also used to add a background image to the box, because there is a different image for each input. We are using an attribute selector looking for the value of the ID attribute on each input. So this is the CSS we are going to use to style. Okay, this is the CSS we are going to use to actually do our styling. We are going to understand it the better. So you see the font size, you see font color, you see background color, you see border. Okay, whether it's solid, you want or dashed, all these are things we've already done. So we repeat, you see background repeat, whether you want to repeat or no repeat, or repeat X and whatever. We've done all these ones, so we're just going to look at it in practice. Okay, let's go to our text editor to actually check how it is going to appear on our browser. Now it's important to visit the formalize.me. I have gone and then downloaded some of the styles. Let me just quickly open it and then go through some of them. We cannot do all. When you're able to go through most of them, you look for the codes that are actually going to work for you. So let me just open this file. So this is actually showing examples of form elements. So you can see these are checkboxes. Okay, and we explain why we use checkboxes and why we use radio buttons. We explain that checkboxes allows you to choose more than one option, whilst the radio buttons allow you to choose only one. You can't choose two radio buttons at a time. These are also drop down. Okay, you see. So if you want to fill a full form and want to make it attractive, you can just use this particular element. This is also easy for you to enter your text. Okay, these are also buttons, input buttons, input tag, link button. These are also multiple select groups. Very, very beautiful. Your URL, you can enter it, email, enter it, your password, you enter it, date of birth. Wow, this is a date picker also, number, so you can use the incremental or the phone number also entered here. It's so beautiful. This form is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And you see file upload, it allows you to upload your files on the form. So this is a very beautiful form, and it contains a lot, if not all, the basic elements you use in creating your form. So you can just copy this code and then you use this in styling your form and then making basic simple edits on what you want and then what you don't want. This is a very big comment box, a bigger text area, while this gives you a smaller text area. It's so beautiful, so beautiful. Now in our text editor, we type in our HTML code for the forms. Okay, HTML codes for the forms and a small submit button. So you see the input, the font size of 120, the color kind of gray, background color, and I give padding and what have you, and I make it block. The display should be blocked. I save it, I come to my web browser and I refresh. So I see the form, a very small form here. I'm going to also explain a problem and a solution. I'm going to display a problem that has to do with form creation and suggest solutions to the problem in subsequent slides. But you can still go to formalize.me and then make yourself comfortable with and then choose and then style whichever portions of the form element you want. There are some submit button styling as well that we can do. I'm going to show you a submit button. In the previous work, our submit button was register, the register button, and set some styles to it. So we can give it a color. Okay, we can change the color of the submit. We can also let it look like a 3D form, okay, by using a text shadow. But this one, you should make sure your browser supports it. Okay, you get the 3D feel. It gives it more clarity. It makes the button also thicker. You can also give a background color to the submit. Okay, so it stands out from the normal text around. And then hovering, the pseudo class, has also been used to change the appearance of the button, which we are going to cover in due time. Now this is the CSS to do that job, the hovering job, and then the 3D fill job as we have it here. Now field sets and legends. How to style field sets. Field sets are particularly helpful in determining the edges of a form. In a long form, they can help group together related information within it. The legend is used to indicate what information is required in the field set. Properties commonly used with these two elements, this is the field set and the legends, are width, color, background color, border radius. But now you should know what border radius are used for. They are used to soften the edges, or they are used to give a curved feeling of our boxes, okay, rounded edges. And then we know what padding is also. Styling field set, this particular code, CSS code, which we are going to go in, is going to explain all what we are talking about in style. Okay, now this is the problem I want us to think about and how to also go on with this kind of challenge. This labels for form elements are often different lengths, which means that the form controls will not appear in a straight line. This is demonstrated in the example I'm going to show you. Okay, and then each topic we ask the user about is placed inside the div element to ensure that each question appears on a new line. It is easier for users to fill in a form if the form controls are aligned in a straight vertical line. The CSS, which I'm going to show you also, okay, is going to address this kind of challenge I'm talking about. Now if you look at where we ask users their gender, their radio buttons, which I've showed you the radio buttons already, okay, the radio buttons each have their own label, say male or female. You see, expand element has also been added to the title, which will help align these controls. Okay, we also saw another technique to align form elements when the form only contains text by setting all of the text input to be the same weight, as well as aligning all the form contents to the right. The fields line up and labels are in a consistent place. They are always in a consistent place. And this is the CSS I was trying to explain. And this is the solution for aligning form controls. So let's read the solution. Each row of the form has a title telling users what they need to enter. So you see first name, last name, date of birth, and what have you. Now for the text input, the title is in the label. For the radio buttons, the title is in the span. Both have a class attribute with a value of a title. With a value of a title. We can use a property called float to move the titles. By setting the weight property on those elements, we know that the titles will each take up the same weight. Therefore, the form controls next to them will line up. The text align property is also used to align the titles to the right. And padding is used to make sure there is a gap between the text in the title box and the form controls. Stars are also applied to the div element that contain each row of the form. The submit button is also aligned to the right, and this is the solution. You see, for the submit button, these are the radio buttons, and the float, these are the titles and what settings have been done on them, and the entire div, what has been done to rate. What about cursor styles? Cursor styles. All these ones you need not to worry if you are done with your form, the formalize.me. Alright, go to the formalize.me, look at the examples, look at the form elements being used, and then just implement it on your web page. But the cursor styles also is an important thing. It allows you to control the type of mouse cursor that should be displayed to users. For example, on a form you might decide to set the cursor to be a hand. Let's like the hyperlink hand. When the user hovers over it, here are some of the most commonly used values for this property. We can use auto, we can use the crosshair, we can use the default, we can use the pointer, we can use the move cursor, the text, okay, the weight, the help, and then we can also use an image, okay, a GIF, to actually represent the cursor. You should only use these values to add helpful information for users in places they would expect to see that cursor. Using a crosshair on a link might confuse users because they are not used to seeing that kind of style. So don't overstyle your work. Okay, know how to do your styling anytime you are working on your website. Otherwise, you create confusion in the minds of your visitors, and then they will not be able to actually see whatever is going on. So this is a link, and then the cursor is a move. Okay, it's a link and a cursor is a move. Now there is a web developer toolbar. Okay, it's an extension you can also get, which I have downloaded already for Facebook and then for Chrome. You can get it at Chris Pederick. Okay, chrispederick.com/work/web developer. Now you can see CSS styles and HTML structure of a web page. So you can go to the CSS menu and look at the toolbar. It is going to give you a lot of information about how to do your styling. Okay, it's going to help you a lot. So when you have that extension, then you add it to your browser, either your Firefox or your Chrome. Okay, It is going to help you a lot in styling. And then in the web developer toolbar also has outlines, structure, and then styles. So when you hover over an element, the red outline will be drawn around it, showing you how much space the element takes up. For the structure, while you are hovering over an element, the structure will be shown at the top of the window. This can be very helpful when writing CSS selectors to help you target the right element. This is going to help you a lot. Okay, and then the CSS styles also, when hovering over an element, click with your mouse and display the CSS. It will be shown the rules that apply to that element. So how the beauty of the web developer toolbar you're going to see is that it is going to help you. It's going to give you a lot of ideas on how to develop your own web page. Okay, and it is going to help you with either the structure, the outline, and even styling.